still intact, so I didn't cut through it. Okay. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to open up the abdominal cavity in kind of the same way. So we're just making windows so we can pull it open and we can see everything. Okay. So again, just take your scissors. If you want to, you can use this hole here and just cut it open right there. I don't like to. I like to have like symmetry. There we go. Okay. And we're just going to cut a window in this the same way, but we want to keep the diaphragm alive. So then I'm going to cut down on the sides. Oh, fatty. There. So here's my diaphragm. Okay. Care about it? No, never have before. Okay, just like that. Okay, so now we've got thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. Everything's exposed. And so far he looks nice, which is good. Or she. Bill's a she this time. Sorry. Okay. This one. This is why they're in plastic, because then I can rinse them off. Okay. So let's see here what we can see. In the first box in the K. Devlin sheet, it's all the coelom. Okay. And then I don't know what all of people who weren't in my lab, what your lab instructors taught you. But I taught you guys about the parietal and the visceral serosa. Remember those? The parietal serosa was lining the epithelium, the epidermis. That's what it is. It was lining epidermis, and then the visceral serosa was lining the gut tube, right? Okay. It's just like that on the inside here, but they have. It's not called serosa. Each region has a specific name. Okay. So up here in the thoracic cavity, we have the visceral and parietal pleura. So parietal pleura lines the body wall up here. Okay. And the visceral pleura is lining the lungs. Okay. What's going on in the heart is a little different, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I need to cut open the heart too, and we'll look at the heart. So we'll do a heart in a second, okay? But for now, we've got parietal pleura lining the walls, okay. Visceral pleura lining the lungs itself, okay. And then down in the abdomen, we have parietal peritoneum lining the body wall, and visceral peritoneum is lining all of the guts, okay? And these two structures are homologous. So parietal pleura, parietal peritoneum are homologous structures. Visceral pleura and visceral peritoneum are homologous structures. Okay. Let's see. Oh, then mesenteries. Do you guys remember the dorsal mesentery and the ventral mesentery? So we actually get to see what those structures have become. He's really fuming on the inside. Okay. If we look at the liver here, so we've got our diaphragm, and I'll turn it around so you guys can see it. It's in my eye. If we pull down on the liver, can you see this little clear thing right there attaching the liver to the diaphragm? You see that? That's the falciform ligament, and this falciform ligament is made of ventral mesentery. Okay, so this is ventral mesentery here. So it's that little clear thing right there. Turn my kitty around. This thing right there attaching the liver to the diaphragm, that's falciform ligament. It's made of ventral mesentery. Okay. So on an exam, I could ask you, what is this structure? Or I could ask you, what structure was this in an embryo? Okay. And in an embryo, it was ventral mesentery. Okay. Hello. Okay. Now, everybody see this? Ooh, this one's good. You guys all see this thing here? Mm-hmm. This is called the greater omentum. Oh, his guts are tiny. Okay. This is greater omentum. Greater omentum is made of dorsal mesentery. And this is that thing that, well, both women and men have it too. But in women, we don't get as much fat deposit here because we have to be able to carry babies. And if we've got a huge amount of fat built up right here, then we can't also make more space to have a baby, right? But in men, this is where a lot of their fat deposits go to. So if you see those guys that are like, got the giant beer belly, right? It's all in there, which is really gross, okay? And then they'll tell you, oh, it's all muscle, right? And you can like hit it and it's hard. And that's because what muscles are right here? Your abdominals, right? The abdominal muscles are lying right over the top of it. So yes, you are hitting muscle, but underneath it really is just all gross fat. Okay. So this is dorsal mesentery. Okay. It's the greater omentum. In an embryo, it was dorsal mesentery. And then there's also a lesser omentum. Okay. And lesser omentum is kind of sitting on top of the stomach. And I'll turn it around so you guys can see it too. But can you see there's this bit right here? Okay. That's lesser omentum. And lesser omentum is made of ventral mesentery. Okay. So both the falciform ligament and the lesser omentum are both ventral mesentery. Okay, so it's this little guy right there. So this is what happens in 224. I have to turn my cat around repeatedly. So this right here, that's lesser omentum. I'm going to move this right here. It's okay. I don't have to touch it. Alrighty, let's see. Mesenteries. Mediastinum. Okay, so let's do thoracic cavity. So we've got lungs. We've got right and left lungs. And then there's this space right here in between the heart, or sorry, in between the lungs. It's a space where the heart is sitting. Okay. And that space is called the mediastinum or the mediastinum. Okay. You can call it either one. The mediastinum is just the space where the heart is sitting. Okay. So there's just this gap in between the lungs, and that gap is called the mediastinum. Okay. So all of this is the heart, and his heart's fatty. And what you want to do when you've got your heart here, okay, there's gonna be a bunch of fat and stuff lining your heart. See how I can just rip this right off? Mm-hmm. You guys want to just get all of this off of here. So just gently pull it off, and you'll actually pull off this little glob of weird brown fat. Okay, and that's actually the thymus gland. Okay. We're gonna pull that right off of the heart too. So I'm just going to get as much of this fat off of here as I can. It's really gross. You'll probably have dried blood in there too. That's gushy, dried blood. All of this is dried blood right here. Or congealed blood. It's gross. I know it. There you go. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to dissect the heart out of its pericardium. Okay. Okay, so there's an important thing we need to make sure that we find before we get the heart out. This is super fumey. Running along both sides of the... Oh, Jeez. Can you guys smell it? Or, like, feel it burning your eyes? Somebody wanna, here, follow me. Somebody. Turn this knob right here. Holy crap. I've never had a cat burn my eyes like this before. There is a nerve that is going to be stuck onto the pericardium. So after I ripped all the fat off, what I'm looking at now is pericardium. And there's going to be a nerve stuck right against the pericardium, and that is the, oh my gosh, phrenic. It's the phrenic nerve. I'm like, it's C345, but I can't remember the name. It's the phrenic nerve. And we want to get the phrenic nerve, we want to make sure that we don't damage it. So all of the nerves will look like little pieces of dental floss. Like they look like dental floss. And so can you see, there's one, this lung's kind of in the way. There's one running right there. Can you see that? So look for a little piece of dental floss kind of stuck onto the pericardium. And you can take a probe and you can actually gently pull that off of the pericardium. We want to save this phrenic nerve. And it will go right up to the diaphragm because phrenic nerve is the innervation of the diaphragm. Okay. So that's an important one. You got to know phrenic nerve. Okay. So get your phrenic nerve free. Okay. At least on one side, if not both sides, because you've got two of them. Okay. So on the other side here, here's my other one. You see this piece of dental floss right there? That's the other one. This is why. So phrenic nerve, it's from your cervical vertebrae. So it's cervical spinal nerves. So it's cervical 3, 4, and 5. So that's why there's a phrase that's C345, keep you alive, and that's because this innervates your diaphragm. If you don't have your diaphragm, you can't breathe, you die. That's why a lot of times when you break your neck, it's not just like the breaking of your, like you can damage those spinal nerves, C3, 4, and 5, and if those get damaged, then your diaphragm doesn't function. I had a friend who fractured like cervical vertebrae 4, I think, and they made him wear a neck brace, and he was mad about it. And I was like, you're an idiot. Like, be happy that you're alive. I think I told it to his face. I was like mad at him. Like, no. Wear that neck brace, damn it. Okay. All right, so now I've got both of my phrenics off here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to gently cut a hole. These scissors are not very sharp. My other ones are better. I'm going to cut a hole into this, just like that. I think that is it. Yeah, okay. So we're just going to cut a hole into this pericardium here. And I'm going to peel it off of the heart, but I'm going to leave pieces of it attached so that we can look at it and go, oh look, that's pericardium. So I'm not going to completely just totally remove it. I'm just going to cut it free so that I can actually look at the heart. Let's see here. Right. So there, I've removed this pericardium there. What a lot of people do, because like I've got lots of gross blood in here that's really gross. What a lot of people do actually is they take their cats and they run them under the faucet and rinse some of this out. So if you get a cat that's gross like mine, where it's super slimy inside and there's lots of this dried blood goo, you can stick it under the sink and rinse it out, and that's totally okay. Lots of people do it. Okay, so this pericardium that I've taken off here, this is called the fibrous pericardium. So it's really thick. Fibrous pericardium is nice and thick. Okay. So it's just the thick part that you actually have to cut through. Okay. And then there's another part of the pericardium that's called the serous pericardium. Okay. So the serous, it's like S-E-R-O-U-S. Okay. And the serous pericardium is made up of 2 layers. Okay. The serous is made up of parietal pericardia and the visceral pericardia. Okay. So we've got the fibrous pericardia, which is the thick fibery layer. Okay. And then for the serous, okay, one part of the serous pericardium, or the part of it that is the parietal pericardia, is actually stuck onto the fibrous. Okay. And the visceral pericardia is stuck onto the heart itself. Okay. So pretend like your fibrous pericardia is the body wall musculature, or is the body wall. Okay. So just like parietal peritoneum is stuck onto the body wall here, and parietal pleura is stuck onto the body wall up in the thoracic cavity. Pretend that this fibrous pericardia is body wall, and then remember that the parietal pericardia is stuck right onto it. And then remember that visceral pericardia is actually stuck on the heart itself. Okay? Does that make sense? This is the thing that confuses people. I have to explain it all the time. All right. Let's see then. I don't usually do. Let's do it. Okay, so we need to go a little bit deeper up in the throat here. There we go. There we go. Okay, so now up here, got a couple things. There we go. What I'm holding on to right now is the trachea. The trachea is the pathway of air from the mouth or the nose down to the lungs. Okay. And it has rings in it. So if you ran your finger along the trachea, you'd feel the cartilaginous rings. Okay. And the trachea, it has those rings in it to keep the trachea open. Okay. So later in the quarter, we'll talk more about that, about those rings. You will have to know the function of those rings, and that's to keep the trachea open. Because any tube that air is passing through, once that tube gets deflated and once it goes flat, it's really hard to re-inflate it. Like the worst part of blowing up a balloon is that first little bit of blowing it up, right? Once it's got some air in it, it's easier to put more air into it or to take air out, right? So the rings stay open so that air can easily flow into and out of our lungs, okay? So this is trachea. And up above the trachea, there's some cartilage here. Okay. This bit of cartilage right here. Okay. This is thyroid cartilage. Okay, so right there, this is thyroid cartilage here. Okay. We'll do cricoid later. Okay. And then underneath of the trachea is another tube, but this tube is flat. Okay. This tube is the esophagus. The esophagus is the first part of our alimentary canal. It's part of the foregut. Okay. So it's this tube right here. So we have the trachea and we have the esophagus. Okay. So there's esophagus. Okay. Esophagus is going to go down through the thoracic cavity, through a hole in the diaphragm, and it's going to pop out and connect to the stomach. So all of this right here, this is all liver, right? And underneath of the liver is the stomach. So this is stomach here. And then stomach is going to, sorry, the liver's just in the way of like whoever's on the other side. The stomach is going to curve around, and there's this little curve right there. This part coming down off of that curve is duodenum. So here's duodenum right here. And duodenum just goes straight down. Turn this around so you guys can see this. So this is all stomach right here. And then the stomach curves up, and then right there, this is duodenum going down. There's duodenum. Okay. So duodenum is the first part of our small intestines. Small intestines are called small not because they're short, but because they have a small diameter. So this is small intestine on this cat. It has a really small diameter. Where if we look at large intestine has a much bigger diameter. So can you see the difference between those two? So small intestine is actually the one that is a lot longer, okay? But it's small because the diameter is small. Okay? And duodenum is the first part of our small intestine. The other two parts are called the jejunum and the ileum. Okay. The difference between, so all of this is jejunum and ileum, as all of this glob that I'm grabbing here. And there's no clear-cut boundary between the two of these, okay? So what I usually do, jejunum is the part of the small intestine that's in the middle. It goes duodenum, and then it's a bunch of jejunum, and then it's ileum. Okay? And so ileum is going to be the part that connects to our large intestine. Okay? So for ileum, if I'm going to pin the ileum, what I'll do is I'll make it so that you can see, can you see here where there's large intestine right there, and there's small intestine right here. So there's large intestine and then there's small intestine. Okay. If I want to pin ileum, I'm going to pin it right here, where you can see both large intestine and small intestine. Because the ileum is the part of the small intestine that connects us to large intestine. So if I pin ileum, I'm going to pin it right there. If I pin jejunum, I'm just going to have the gut sitting there, and I'm going to pin somewhere randomly in the middle, where everything you see after is small and everything you see before it is small. So you'll just see small intestine if I'm pinning jejunum. Make sense? Sound okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what's this here? Jejunum. What's this part right here? Duodenum. Stomach. Liver. What's this nerve here? Phrenic nerve. Trachea. Esophagus. What's lining here? Parietal peritoneum. Okay. So see, large intestine. What you want to do for large intestine is take all of your small intestines and kind of pull them down. And you'll see that the large intestine, I take the greater omentum and fold it up. And you'll see the large intestine doing kind of this rainbow, we call it a rainbow. It goes up, it goes across, and then it goes down. So there's like this rainbow shape to it. You see it? Try this way. This is rainbow. Like that. Okay. The part that goes up, that's ascending colon. The part that goes across, that's transverse colon, because it's in the transverse plane. And then the part that goes down is the descending colon. So it goes ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. It's real simple. Okay. For sigmoid colon and rectum, I'm not going to do either of those on cats. Because sigmoid colon in a cat it's not really sigmoid, and the rectum is far deep in there, and I don't want to bother. This bladder's really gross. Okay. So if you notice, this descending colon is off on the side over here, but our anus is right in the middle. Okay. So the sigmoid colon is the part of the colon that does this little like jiggly move to get into the middle. It's just like a little squiggly. So we can't see it in the cat, but when we look at the cadaver, you'll see it. It's like this squiggle that it does to get into the middle. Okay? And then the rectum is everything after that squiggle. Okay? So I don't do either of those on cats. Let's see. We did esophagus, gallbladder. Oh, we didn't do gallbladder. Okay. So if we look here in the liver, there's this green thing here. That green thing, that's the gallbladder. We have the liver, we have gallbladder, the green thing. To see the pancreas, what you want to do is take your greater omentum and fold it up, okay, and then look against your duodenum. I'll turn them around so you can see it too. You see this piece, this thing here? I think it looks kind of like carne asada, except it's wider, obviously. That's pancreas. So pancreas is kind of running underneath of this greater omentum here, and then along the duodenum. In humans, it's tucked right up into the duodenum. Okay. If I turn this around, there's this thing here running under the greater omentum and then along the duodenum right there. So it's this thing right here. That's pancreas. Pancreas is super important. Pancreas makes insulin and glucagon that help regulate sugar. And insulin does a lot helping us know what kind of food to digest and all sorts of things. That's why, and pancreatic cancer is really bad because it kills your pancreas's ability to make insulin. Actually, I learned something cool. Actually, it was a couple years ago now. That diabetes, the one that you're born with, so the type 1, is it? Mm-hmm. Type 1 diabetes, it's actually an autoimmune disease. Your immune system attacks the beta cells in your pancreas so that they no longer produce insulin. Like, that's wild to me. I learned that. I was like, what? That's crazy. Where the type 2, that's just, it's called insulin intolerance. So if you have type 2 diabetes, it's that your body gets so used to having so much sugar in your blood all the time that it doesn't release insulin anymore. So, it's like if you smell something stinky and then you stay in with the smell long enough, you just get used to it. It's like your pancreas gets used to the elevated levels of sugar in your blood and just stops like, sugar levels are normal, I don't need insulin. So that's why like you can treat it with diet and exercise.